They say you should never look a gift horse in the mouth. But what if the gift is a multi-million-dollar mansion, a life of luxury, and a husband who seems sculpted by a god? What if the horse is hiding fangs? I installed the hidden cameras as an anniversary gift to myself. I thought I was being paranoid. I was wrong. I was being smart. What I saw that night didn't just break my heart. It shattered my entire reality. If you think you know the person sleeping next to you, think again. Subscribe, because what I discovered in my own home is the thing of nightmares, and the revenge I plotted was just as cold. My name is Ava. 2 years ago, I was a struggling graphic designer, living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment that smelled of old takeout and desperation. Then I met Julian Thorne. He was magnetic. A venture capitalist with a smile that could disarm a bomb and a wallet that could buy the factory the bomb was made in. Our whirlwind romance was straight out of a fairy tale. Proposals on private jets, weekends in Monaco, a diamond so heavy it felt like an anchor tying me to this new, glittering life. We got married in a blaze of paparazzi flashes. I moved into his modern fortress of glass and steel, a minimalist masterpiece overlooking the city. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. The first crack appeared about 6 months in. I woke up at 3 a.m. to an empty bed. I found Julian in his study, his back to me, speaking in a low, vicious whisper into his phone. The tone was nothing like the charming, gentle man I knew. It was ice cold. When he heard me, he spun around, his face morphing into a warm smile so fast it gave me whiplash. Just a stressful overseas call, my love. Nothing for you to worry about. He kissed my forehead, but his eyes were still calculating. Then there were the locked doors, a basement door that was always locked. Just old plumbing, darling. An eyesore, he'd say, but I'd sometimes press my ear to the cold wood and swear I could hear humming, a strange, tuneless humming. My once charming husband started making odd comments. That dress is a bit revealing, don't you think, Ava? We don't want to give the wrong impression. Or, I canceled your lunch with Sarah. She's a bad influence. You don't need friends like that. You have me. I was living in a palace, but it was becoming a prison. The isolation was the worst part. He'd fired the longtime housekeeper, saying he valued our privacy. My friends drifted away, subtly alienated by his generous critiques of their lives. I was alone. Utterly alone with a man I was beginning to fear. The final straw was our 2nd anniversary. He planned a lavish party, of course. Dozens of his sleek, powerful friends. I was his beautiful, silent trophy wife, expected to smile and look pretty. In the middle of the party, I saw him across the room, laughing with a business partner. But his laugh didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were scanning the room, cold and assessing, like a predator. And for a split second, they landed on me, and the look in them wasn't love. It was ownership. That was the moment I decided. While he was busy playing the host, I was busy planting my little digital spies. A tiny camera in the smoke detector in his study, another in the digital clock facing the locked basement door, a nanny cam disguised as a charger block in the living room. It wasn't about trust anymore. It was about survival. The party ended. Julian, drunk on expensive scotch and his own power, fell into a deep sleep. But I was wide awake, my heart hammering against my ribs, my phone in my hand, the app for the cameras open. This was my real anniversary gift to myself, the truth. I took a deep breath, and I tapped the live stream for the camera in his study. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy, green-tinged view of Julian's study from the smoke detector in the ceiling. The room was empty. The grand oak desk was tidy, the leather chair vacant. My breath hitched. Had he discovered the cameras? Was this all for nothing? Then the door opened. He walked in, but he wasn't the man who had just fallen asleep beside me. His posture was different, straighter, more rigid, his movements efficient and devoid of the lazy grace he usually possessed. He didn't turn on the main light, only the harsh, clinical beam of his desk lamp, which carved deep shadows into his face. He sat down, opened a drawer, and pulled out a second, generic smartphone I had never seen before. He made a call, putting it on speaker. Report? A gruff voice came through the speaker. The asset is secure. No issues. The transfer is scheduled for tomorrow night. Asset? Transfer? My blood ran cold. This was business, but it sounded like something from a spy thriller. Good. And the wife? The word hit me like a physical blow. The wife. Not Ava. Not my wife. I was an object. A variable in his equation. Oblivious. She bought the anniversary story completely. You were right, the isolation tactics worked perfectly. She has no one to turn to. The air left my lungs. The canceled lunches, the fired housekeeper, the subtle comments about my friends, it was all a calculated strategy. A plan to make me completely dependent, completely alone. Of course she did. She was easy. Starving for affection and stability. I simply gave her a fantasy. But the fantasy ends tomorrow. Is the medication ready? Prepped and loaded. 1 injection and she'll be compliant for the 12-hour flight. The private clinic in Switzerland is expecting their new long-term patient, suffering from severe paranoid delusions. The paperwork is impeccable. The world dropped out from under me. My hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped the phone. Private clinic, Switzerland, paranoid delusions. He wasn't just controlling me. He was planning to have me declared insane, to lock me away in a foreign institution and steal everything. My life, my freedom, my very sanity. It was all just a line item on his balance sheet. I watched, paralyzed, as he ended the call. Then, he did something even more bizarre. He stood up, walked over to a large, abstract painting on the wall, a splatter of colors I'd always thought was ugly, and slid it aside. Behind it was a wall safe I never knew existed. He worked the combination, opened it, and pulled out a thick, bound file. He brought it back to his desk, and under the lamp I could just make out the tab on the file. It had a single typewritten word on it. Project Dove. Dove, his pet name for me. This wasn't a marriage. It was a project, a long-con operation, and I was the target. A hot, primal rage began to burn through the paralyzing fear. They thought I was a helpless, oblivious bird in a gilded cage. They thought they could clip my wings and ship me off. They had no idea this dove had claws. I switched to the camera feed for the basement door. My heart was a war drum in my chest. I had to know what was down there. What asset was so important? As if on cue, Julian walked out of his study and towards the basement door. He pulled a heavy set of keys from his pocket, unlocked it, and disappeared down the dark staircase. This was my only chance. While he was downstairs, I had to act. I slipped out of bed, my body thrumming with adrenaline. I went to my walk-in closet, to a hidden panel in the back where I kept my emergency go bag, a habit from my struggling days I'd never broken. Cash, a prepaid phone, my old passport. Now it would be my lifeline, but I needed more. I needed proof. I crept out into the hallway, the cold marble biting my bare feet. The house was silent and vast, a monument to his lies. I could hear faint, muffled sounds coming from the basement. The humming was louder now. It was a person. Someone was humming down there. I slipped into his study. The project, Dove file was still on the desk. My hands shook as I flipped it open. Inside were photos of me from before we met, financial documents, a forged psychiatric evaluation with my name on it, and a detailed timeline titled Acquisition and Pacification. I took my phone and started frantically taking pictures of every page. This was my insurance. This was my weapon. Suddenly, the humming from the basement stopped. A door creaked open downstairs. He was coming back. I was trapped in the lion's den, with the lion coming up the stairs. I had the evidence in my hands, but no way out. I froze for a second, the file clutched to my chest, the sound of his footsteps on the basement stairs like gunshots in the silent house. Panic screamed at me to run, to hide. But a new voice, cold and clear, cut through the noise. Use his own arrogance against him. I slid the file back onto the desk, exactly as it was. I didn't run. I walked calmly to the doorway, and as his head appeared at the top of the stairs, I met him there, rubbing my eyes as if I'd just woken up. "Julian? I woke up and you were gone. Everything okay?" He was startled, his eyes darting from me to the study behind me. I saw the calculation in his gaze, the instant assessment for any sign of a threat. Seeing me, disoriented, vulnerable in my nightgown, he relaxed. The predator was so sure of his docile prey. "Just a work emergency, my dove. Nothing for you to worry about. Let's get you back to bed." He guided me back to the bedroom, his arm around me. It felt like being led by a snake. Every cell in my body was screaming, but I smiled. I played my part. The oblivious wife, the perfect dove. The moment his breathing deepened into sleep, I was awake, my mind racing. Running was what he expected, a frantic, desperate flight that would let him play the concerned husband and have me picked up and institutionalized. Number. I wouldn't run. I would make him run. I would trap him in his own web. The next morning, I was the picture of wifely devotion. I made him coffee. I talked about our future, all while my new prepaid phone was burning a hole in my pocket. My first call wasn't to the police. It was to the most ruthless, discreet private investigator money could buy. I used his money, wiring $10,000 from a joint account he never monitored. I sent the PI the photos of the project Dove file. "I need everything," I told him. "The identity of the asset in the basement, the ownership of the Swiss clinic, and the corporate structure of every shell company he owns." While he worked, I replicated his key. I waited until he was in the shower, took the heavy key ring, and pressed each one into a bar of soap I'd secretly bought, a childhood trick from a life he thought was beneath him. The PI's report came back 24 hours later, and it was a masterpiece of destruction. The asset in the basement was a whistleblower from a rival company, a programmer Julian had kidnapped to steal a groundbreaking AI algorithm. The Swiss clinic was a notorious, unregulated facility known for housing inconvenient, wealthy relatives. And Julian's entire empire was a house of cards, built on insider trading, corporate espionage, and fraud. I had it all, but handing it to the police would only get him arrested. I wanted more. I wanted him to feel the same utter powerlessness he had planned for me. Our anniversary dinner was that night, the night he planned to drug me and ship me off. The stage was set for his final act, but I had rewritten the script. I wore a red dress, a color of warning, of blood. He had hired a private chef for our romantic dinner. What he didn't know was that I'd gotten to the chef first, showing her a photo of the syringe and the clinic documents. Her sister had been a victim of something similar. She was on my side. The dinner was surreal. He was pouring champagne, smiling, his eyes already victorious. I smiled back, my phone in my lap, connected to the PI via text. My text, "Is everyone in position?" His reply, "FBI, SWAT, rival company security. All outside, waiting for your signal." Julian raised his glass. "To my beautiful wife, and to our future." I raised mine. "To the truth," I said, my voice steady. I placed my phone on the table, screen up, and I pressed play. It was a highlight reel, a video I'd edited from the hidden camera footage. Him on the phone. The wife is oblivious. Him saying, "The medication is ready." Him opening the safe, the project, Dove file in full view. The color drained from his face. "Ava, what is this? What lie have you concocted?" "That's not all," I said, and I gave the signal. The front door exploded inwards. The dining room was suddenly filled with FBI agents in body armor, their weapons drawn. At the same time, SWAT teams flooded in from the garden, and right behind them, men in the security uniforms of his rival company rushed towards the basement door. It was chaos. Beautiful, glorious chaos. He was dragged from his chair, his perfect suit wrinkled, his face a mask of stunned horror. As they cuffed him, he looked at me, his eyes wide with a new, terrifying understanding. I walked up to him, the file in my hand. "You thought I was your project, Julian," I whispered so only he could hear. "But you were mine. I was just due diligence." I watched them take him away. The whistleblower was freed from the basement. The rival company got their algorithm back. And I, the oblivious wife, Was hailed as a hero who helped take down a criminal mastermind. I used the project Dove file in the divorce. I got everything. The houses, the accounts, the investments. I sold it all and donated a massive portion to charities that help victims of coercive control and financial abuse. Julian is serving a 25-year sentence in a federal prison. I hear he has a new project now, trying to avoid the inmates from the rival company he wronged. As for me? I bought a small, sunny studio apartment that smells of fresh paint and freedom. I run my own design firm, and I sleep peacefully through the night. He wanted to lock a dove in a cage, but he never realized doves are a symbol of peace, and sometimes peace can only be won with a war. What would you have done if you discovered the person you loved was a complete stranger? Tell me your revenge ideas in the comments, and subscribe, because for every story of betrayal, there's an even better story of survival. This was mine.